After spending months planning a surprise 40th anniversary party for my parents, I walked into the room and watched my brother hand them a gift basket and take all the credit. My mother cried and hugged him while I stood there with a frozen smile, holding the real guest list. A year later, when they needed help selling the family home, I politely declined and bought a house of my own instead. I'm still mad about it, even now. I'm not the dramatic type. I don't usually post stuff online, especially not about my family. But this has been sitting inside me like a splinter under the skin, and I think I need to get it out. Last year, my parents hit their 40th wedding anniversary. They've lived in the same house in Spokane since before I was born. My brother Dean and I grew up there. Dean's 3 years older than me, and our whole lives, he's been the one who gets away with everything. When he broke curfew, boys will be boys. When I missed a curfew, we expected more from you. Dean was the favorite. I always knew it, but I didn't want to believe it was that bad. I figured they loved us both, just in different ways. I held on to that belief until last year, when it hit me in the face in front of 70 people. It started in January. I was working full-time and had some money saved up. Not a lot, but enough to do something special for them. I got this idea to throw a real anniversary party. Not just cake at the house or dinner at Applebee's. A real party. They never had a proper wedding, and I wanted to give them something close to it. I picked the Glover Mansion for the venue. It's this old historic house in town that gets rented out for events. It wasn't cheap, but I put down the deposit. I worked extra shifts, used my tax refund, skipped out on stuff for myself. Didn't care. I wanted to do this. I made the guest list. I called people myself. I emailed. Texted. I even tracked down friends from their old church and an old coworker Dad used to talk about. It took weeks. I hired a DJ. Picked out music I knew they'd love. Mom always said her favorite song was, "You Are So Beautiful," so I made sure that would be their first dance. I even had their wedding date engraved on the cake topper. I made a slideshow of pictures from their entire life together. I dug through old photo albums, scanned stuff at the library, even touched up a few that were torn or faded. I called Dean, asked if he could come. He sounded half asleep on the phone. Yeah, maybe. Money's tight. You got a date yet? I told him. He said he'd see. Never asked for details. I should have known something was up. Fast forward to the day of the party. I got to the mansion early, helped the staff set up the tables, added little photo centerpieces, made sure the guest book was by the door. I was nervous but excited. My hands were shaking when the first guests started arriving. People were blown away. Aunt Marcy from Idaho hugged me and said, "I can't believe you did all this." Then Dean walked in. He was wearing a new blazer, clean shave, hair styled. He looked sharp. He was holding this big gift basket wrapped in plastic with a bow. He walked in like he owned the place. I was confused at first. I thought maybe he brought something to contribute. He walked right up to our parents, big smile on his face, and said, "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. I've been working on this surprise for a long time. I wanted to do something special." I felt like I got punched in the stomach. Mom gasped. Dad's jaw dropped. She reached out and hugged him hard, tearing up. "You planned all this?" Dean chuckled. "Yeah. It wasn't easy keeping it a secret." They were glowing. People clapped. Someone even said, "Wow, what a great son." And I just stood there, literally holding the damn guest list in my hands. No one looked at me. No one said anything. Dean walked around like the star of the show. I waited for him to come clean. Thought maybe he'd at least say I helped or that we did it together. He didn't. I watched my mom cry over a lie. I held it together the whole night. Smiled. Thanked guests. I didn't even confront him. I went home after, sat in the driveway for 45 minutes with my hands shaking. I didn't sleep for 2 days. After that, I barely spoke to him. I didn't tell my parents what he did. Maybe I should have, but something in me broke. It felt like the final answer to a question I'd been asking all my life. A year later, they decided to sell the house. Dad called me and said Mom's health was getting worse and they needed help with the sale, cleaning, organizing, maybe even dealing with the agent. He asked if I'd come by and help out. That same day, I signed the papers on my own house. I'd been saving all year, quietly. I bought a little place up north, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I waited until everything was finalized, then called him back. I'm not going to be involved with the house, I said. I just bought my own. He was silent for a minute. Wait, what? I bought a house. On my own. Just like Dean pulled off that anniversary party on his own. He didn't respond. A week later, my mom called. Her voice sounded thin. So you're really not helping? She asked. No, I said. But I hope Dean's got it handled. You know, since he's so good at planning things. She hung up. That was 3 months ago. Last week, Dean called me in a panic. The buyer pulled out, and a pipe burst in the basement. He asked if I could help him talk to the insurance company. I told him, I'm busy. And I was. I was painting the kitchen in my house. I haven't seen my parents since. They never visited. Never asked about the house I bought. I drive past the old place sometimes. Looks tired. Like it knows it's been forgotten. Dean's still living there while they try to sell. Still lying, still pretending. But I'm not angry anymore. I just don't care. That's what they taught me. I was the one who stayed. The one who worked, planned, showed up. But they made their choice. Now I've made mine. A few weeks after Dean called me asking for help, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. In my mailbox. My name handwritten on the front. It was from Mom. I opened it in my kitchen. The envelope was torn a little on one side, like someone opened it and resealed it. Inside was a 3-page letter. Neat cursive. Blue ink. It smelled faintly like her lavender hand lotion. She started with, I hope you're well, but the tone changed fast. She said she was hurt that I wouldn't help them. That it felt like punishment. She wrote, I know things weren't fair at the party, but you never said anything. Then came the part that got me. She said, Dean told us you refused to contribute. That you didn't want to be part of the planning. We assumed you were just too busy or didn't care. I stared at the page, blinking. He told them I refused. I kept reading. She wrote about how hard it's been trying to downsize. How the house held memories. How Dad's knees are getting worse. She said they thought Dean was doing his best. She ended it with, I hope you find it in your heart to come see us before the house sells. It would mean the world. I folded the letter and set it on the table. My hands were shaking again. Not from sadness this time, anger. Pure, bitter, slow-burning anger. Dean had lied to them again. Covered his own ass, just like he always did. Let me look like the selfish one. I pulled out my old laptop and opened the folder from last year. Every receipt. Every email. Every RSVP. Every invoice in my name. I printed it all. The next day, I made a copy of the guest list, the original one, with my handwriting. I put everything in a manila envelope. No letter. No explanation. Just the truth. I mailed it to them. Certified. A week passed. No call. No text. Then I got a voicemail. It was Dad. His voice was different. Flat. Cold. We got the papers. Wish you'd spoken up earlier. Lot of things are clearer now. That's all he said. Click. 2 days later, Dean showed up at my house. I heard a knock and looked through the peephole. He stood there with his fake grin, but it dropped when I opened the door. Man, really, he said. You mailed them that crap? I didn't say anything. He stepped closer. You trying to make me look bad? You did that on your own, I said. He scoffed. You think that makes you the good guy? No. But it makes me honest. He looked around, at my porch, my yard, my house. Then he said something I'll never forget. You really think you won, huh? I stared at him. I don't need to win. I just needed the truth out. He stepped back. They're gonna sell the house. They might move out of state. Okay. He shook his head like I was crazy. You're just gonna let them go? They let me go a long time ago. I shut the door. He stood there for a second. Then I heard him walk off. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 weeks later, I got another call. This time, it was a lawyer. The voicemail from the lawyer was short, and it made my stomach drop. Mr. Reyes, this is Samuel Bell with Hopkins and Mayer. We're handling Ron and Marlene Reyes estate planning. Please call us back at your earliest convenience. Estate planning. My parents weren't even that old, late 60s. I mean, yeah, Mom's health had been up and down, but this wasn't something we ever talked about. Not seriously. I called back the next morning. Bell was polite, formal. He asked if I could come into the office that Friday to go over some recent revisions. When I walked into the office downtown, Dean was already sitting there in the conference room. He didn't look at me when I sat down. Bell handed each of us a packet. I flipped through it. It was a revised will. Fresh signatures. Recent date. There was a highlighted paragraph. It said Dean had been named the sole executor and primary heir of their estate, including any remaining assets from the house sale. I was listed for one item, an old fishing rod that belonged to my grandfather. That was it. I stared at the page. My throat went dry. I looked up at Bell. Why am I here? Bell hesitated. Your parents asked that both sons be notified of the changes, in person. For transparency. I turned to Dean. This what you wanted? He finally looked at me. They made the choice. After everything you pulled? What did you expect? I laughed, bitter and low. What I pulled? Bell cleared his throat. If this is going to become hostile, Dean stood up, grabbed his copy of the will, and walked out. I sat there a while longer. Bell said something about how these things are always hard on families, but I wasn't listening anymore. All I could hear was a buzzing in my ears. They'd cut me out. Entirely. Not that I wanted their house. Or their money. But the fact they put it in writing, it hit different. I left the office and didn't go home. I drove up into the hills, parked where you can see the whole city, and just sat there. I kept thinking, they picked the liar again. Even after proof. Even after everything. Then I remembered something. The deed to the house. I wasn't on it. Of course I wasn't. But Dean wasn't either. Only Dad's name. I didn't know why, but it lit something in me. I spent the next few days digging. I pulled county property records. Looked up sale history. My name wasn't on anything, but I found something interesting. 6 years ago, my dad took out a home equity line of credit. A big one. It was still open. And the house hadn't been paid off. There was a second mortgage from 2019. Dean didn't know. But I did now. And that gave me an idea. I spent the next 2 days reading everything I could about home equity loans and second mortgages. I even scheduled a free consultation with a real estate lawyer. I told him I was doing research for a friend. He didn't need to know the whole truth. What I learned confirmed what I suspected. The house wasn't in great shape financially. Between the open line of credit and the second mortgage, there was barely any equity left. And any remaining value would be chewed up by realtor fees, repairs, and closing costs. If they tried to sell it fast as they planned, they'd be lucky to break even. More likely, they'd owe. And here's the twist: if Dean was going to be the executor and primary heir, he'd be the one left to deal with the mess. I started checking listings in their neighborhood. I found one house on their street, same layout, same year built, had just sold after sitting on the market for 9 months. It went for $20,000 under asking. I made a copy of that listing and mailed it to Dean. No note. Just the listing and a sticky note that said, "You might want to adjust your expectations." 2 days later, he called. Didn't even say hello. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. "You're the planner now," I said. "Just giving you a head start." He cursed under his breath. They said the house was worth at least $400. Said it'd be an easy sell. Yeah, well, I said, maybe they believed that. Or maybe they told you what you wanted to hear. He went quiet. Then he said, "Are you doing this on purpose?" I leaned back in my chair. "No, Dean. I planned the last big event for this family, remember? You're the one who takes credit." He hung up. That weekend, I got another call from my dad. His voice was tired. He asked if I'd come by the house. I said, "I don't think that's a good idea." He said, "Please. Just once." I don't know why I agreed. Curiosity? Pity? Maybe I just wanted to see what kind of people could cut me out and sleep at night. I showed up Sunday morning. The front yard looked worse than I remembered: patchy lawn, tools left out, a bag of mulch half spilled near the steps. Inside, Mom was sitting in her recliner. She looked smaller somehow. Thinner. Dad gestured for me to sit. Dean was already there, sitting stiff on the couch, arms crossed. No one spoke for a full minute. Then Dad said, "We need to talk." Mom looked up. "We read everything you sent." She didn't sound angry. She sounded tired. Like she was holding something in. Dad cleared his throat. "What Dean said, about you not wanting to be part of the party, we know now that wasn't true." Dean shifted. He didn't look at me. "We should have asked questions," Dad went on. "Should have looked into things. But we didn't. That's on us." Mom added, "It's not just about the party. We failed you before that. We know." My jaw clenched. I wanted to say, "Too little, too late." But I just waited. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "We want to change the will back." Dean's head snapped toward her. "What?" Dad nodded. "We're meeting with Belle next week. We're splitting everything evenly." Dean stood up. "You can't do that. You already signed it." Dad looked at him. "We can revise it." Dean was shaking. "This is insane. He's manipulating you." "No," Mom said softly. "You did that." Dean looked at me like he wanted to hit me. Like I'd stolen something from him. But I didn't flinch. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. It echoed down the hall. My parents sat there in silence. Then Dad looked at me and said, "We don't expect you to forgive us. But we're trying to make it right." I nodded once. Got up. Walked out without another word. Outside, I stood by my car, breathing in the cold air. I didn't know what came next. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. Just ready. The next few months moved fast. True to their word, my parents met with the lawyer and changed the will. I didn't ask them to. I didn't beg. I didn't even check in to see if it really happened. But 2 weeks after our last conversation, Belle mailed me a copy of the updated documents. It was even. Half to Dean. Half to me. There was a handwritten note from Belle paper clipped to the top. Your parents asked me to send this for transparency. They also said you were right. I didn't feel proud. Or even relieved. Just tired. But I figured that was the best I could hope for with them. Then the house sale started to fall apart. The inspection came back: bad mold in the basement, roof damage, electrical issues in the upstairs hallway. The buyer backed out. Dean tried to manage repairs, but he wasn't ready for how expensive it would get. One night, around midnight, he showed up at my house again. Same fake smile. But this time it was cracking. I need a loan, he said, standing on my porch. I didn't move. No. He blinked. Just like that? You've had years to figure out how to stand on your own. He laughed bitterly. They'll lose the house. I shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. But this isn't my mess. He clenched his jaw. This is your revenge, isn't it? No, I said. That was last year. This is just the fallout. Dean didn't take it well. He left angry. He started calling our parents and blaming me. Said I was trying to destroy the family. They didn't buy it this time. And then the real twist hit. I got a call from Belle again. Another update. Mom passed away. It was sudden heart failure. The stress, the move, the health stuff she'd been pushing off, it all hit at once. I drove to the hospital, but I was too late. Dad was there, sitting in a plastic chair near the vending machines. He looked 10 years older. She asked about you, he said, staring at the ground. Right before. I sat down across from him. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, he looked like a man who understood what he'd lost: not just his wife, but his other son. I should have seen what Dean was, he said. You were always the one who showed up. Always the one who meant it. I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. We buried her 2 days later. Dean showed up late to the funeral. No tie. Smelled like liquor. He tried to speak during the service. Dad told him to sit down. When it was over, Dean confronted me near the parking lot. You happy now? He said. His eyes were red. You got everything you wanted. They picked you. I stepped closer, looked him right in the eye. No, Dean. I didn't want them to pick me. I wanted them to see me. And they did too late. That's the part I'll never forget. He didn't respond. Just stared at the ground. Then he got in his car and drove off. 3 months later, the house sold for way less than asking. After closing costs, repairs, and the loans Dad still owed, the estate was down to almost nothing. The final split? About $9,000 each. Not exactly the jackpot Dean thought he was walking away with. I put mine into a home office remodel. Bought a new desk. New shelves. Hung up a framed copy of the guest list from that party. Not out of pride. Out of reminder. Because here's the truth, I stayed silent too long. I let them believe lies because it felt easier than causing a scene. I smiled when I should have spoken up. I held the door open for people who never even turned around to thank me. I was complicit in my own erasure. But I learned. And the next time someone tries to erase me, they won't get the chance.